Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure welcoming you all to our webinar, CFOs Leading the Charge in ESG Strategies. Today's deliberations will revolve around how CFO's role has progressed from pursuing purely financial objectives to assisting the businesses in achieving their ESG goals and also driving sustainability initiatives. Before we begin, I would like to give a brief about ASA and our speakers today. We are a three-decade-old accounting and consulting firm with a team of over 1,000 professionals spread across 8 offices in India, besides a well-oiled network of national and international affiliations. We work with our clients, many from overseas, to help them set up offices and factories in India, find partners, take care of their audit, taxation, accounting, and business support requirements, GST advisory, risk advisory services, and also help with restructuring and liquidations as well. Our esteemed speakers for today are Santosh Jairam, Global Head Sustainability, HCL Technologies, who will be the moderator for this session. Santosh's current role is to strategize and integrate sustainable value creation for HCL and its stakeholders. His past role with KPMG saw him leading one of Asia's largest sustainability consulting teams. He is a fellow of the Institute of Directors India, has a mechanical engineering degree from Calicut University, a master's in environmental science and engineering from IIT Mumbai, and also undertook a course at the University of California, Berkeley. He is a member of multiple committees to develop standards in the sustainability space, and his expertise has also been sought by Harvard and INSEAD. He has been part of task forces set up by the Government of India and SEBI. We then have Sridhar TK, CFO of ABB India. Sridhar is a cost management accountant, and a certified independent director, having also undertaken professional development courses at IMD Business School, Switzerland. A finance and accounts expert with over 30 years of global experience and well-versed in US and Indian GAAP and IFRS and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and has expertise in setting up internal financial controls and managing audits. He was part of the core strategy team that spearheaded strategic M&As to help ABB achieve success in India. He has actively supported ESG and CSR programs at ABB India, presenting at various investor, executive, and board levels, and was responsible in publishing the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report 2021 as an early adopter of SEBI mandate. Our next panelist is Raj Malik, Controller and Chief Business Performance and Financial Analysis of Reliance Industries Limited. Raj is a chartered accountant, a cost management accountant, and MBA from IIM Calcutta, and also undertook a financial management course from the Stanford University. As the Chief Accounts Officer of Reliance Group, he is responsible for the management and financial reporting of this group, comprising over 500 subsidiaries, associates, and JVs. He also played a strategic role in driving RIL's ESG credibility and disclosure activities. He speaks at national and international forums and a special invitee in accounting standards boards and in Indian Accounting Standard Committees of the ICI. He has held prestigious awards like the CA Professional Achiever Award of the Year, conferred by ICI in 2013, the youngest group-level leader of Reliance Industries, and steering RIL's Integrated Annual Report to win the Best Presented Integrated Annual Report Silver Award in 2019. Then we have Namita Vikas, who is the founder and managing director of Octus ESG LLP. Namita is an award-winning senior business leader with over 30 years of diverse global experience in sustainable finance, ESG, and climate strategy across banking and technology. In a previous leadership role with a large Indian private bank, she led the maiden issuance of a green bond and also launched many innovative, first-of-its-kind sustainable finance products. She was also instrumental in raising over $1 billion in green capital from marquee global DFIs. Since 2020, following her passion to accelerate global sustainable finance and climate transition, she has steered marquee global projects awarded by international governments, UN agencies, and global DFIs at Octus ESG. Namita continues to be a member of several expert committees on sustainable finance and ESG, including those by the Government of India and the International Organization for Standardization. Currently, she sits on the Global Advisory Board of Climate Bonds Initiative UK, the Finance Industry Advisory Board of the IA, and the Digital Green USA. Last but not the least, we have Gaurav Bhatia, who is executive partner in a risk advisory practice. Gaurav Bhatia leads the risk advisory function of the firm in the Delhi NCR region. With over 14 years of experience in forensic audits, corporate investigations, internal audits, enterprise risk management, and ESG engagements, he has assisted various MNCs, Indian business groups, and regulatory bodies. He holds certifications in forensic accounting and fraud detection and business responsibility and sustainability report from the ICI. Before we begin with this engaging session, a few pointers for this webinar. Please note that all the participants will be in listen to only mode throughout the webinar. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the question section. We will be emailing a link with the recording of this webinar shortly. Thank you, everyone, and over to you, Santosh.
Thank you, Vikramjit, and good afternoon to all of you. And thanks to ASA for bringing the spotlight on the CFOs around ESG. And so when the topic was told to be CFOs leading the charge in ESG strategies, I went to my bookshelf and picked out two books. One is, I can't show this over here. I think there is 6 capitals, or can accountants save the planet? It's a question. And it's written by Jane Gleason White. And then the second book which I picked up is an answer to that question, which says accountants can save the planet. And this is written by Mervyn King and Jill Atkins, where in this book, especially the second book which I showed, the idea is that how the CFO should become to be known as a chief value officer, or how the CFO can transform to a chief value officer by integrating ESG strategies. I will start with the two accountants in this panel to start the questions as to is that transformation happening in the CFO world? And if so, share how that transformation is happening. Maybe Sridhar, I will start with you.
Thank you, Santosh. I think it's always tough to be the opening batsman of any match, but still I'll give a try. I think first of all, I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to discuss about this particular topic. Thanks to ASA for taking this initiative. So it's wonderful meeting all of you guys and also sharing what's happening in this particular world on this particular topic, which has actually gathered so much of relevance and importance in this particular this thing. So I think before I start, right, so I would like to give a personal experience, right? So my daughter is an engineer and she wanted to join some firm before she wants to go for a personal, for an higher studies. Then the way they sort of started sorting out and looking at the companies is, are these companies investing for the future in terms of saving the planet, right? That was one of the questions which was there in the checklist of how they could select companies where they would go and perform the interviews. I think, I mean, why I said this initiative is because the younger generation is now trying to look at these type of aspects, which is going to define the future of this particular earth. And so, therefore, I think it was a very pertinent topic. So, and she's in the 4th year, so she's just going for an interviews, and she said, okay, these are my checklist of points. So it's a very interesting development which happened. So now let's look at what's the driving forces. The driving forces are definitely in the current business scenario, the investors and the regulators are not only looking at the financial performance of any organization, but also mandating absolutely very transparent disclosure of non-financial information, which is a very key for performance of the organization. So that's something which is actually coming up. Another thing is the customer's behavior is also shifting towards buying sustainable products. They are not looking at just buying a cost-effective product, but they're also looking at how does it remain sustainable in the planet as such. And therefore, I think even they have realized that adopting ESG on a holistic basis is so important and so for them to be so relevant going forward, right? So, and to top it all, we have the credit agencies who have now stepped in to say, guys, if you follow these practices, you enjoy this credit rating, which therefore gives you a lot of money. So with this particular background, so now let's look at how does a CFO play, right? So I'll just take a couple of more minutes to do this. I think CFOs play a pretty important role in integrating sustainability as one of the value parameters in the total business strategy, right? So I think whenever we work on it, we say now, is sustainability a part of this particular strategy or is something it's way out? So that's number one. And because CFOs are a very important people who take decisions on certain investments, be it on certain cost-related initiatives, so they are actually able to prioritize which is so important and which will make them keep them relevant, right? So therefore, they look at what is the value perception of any of this particular topic in terms of these ESG initiatives as well. So therefore, I would say the focus of the CFO has not only been now measured with respect to how much profits or cash or how much revenues we do, but also look at how are we running a company very holistically on a sustainable manner, focusing on these non-finance parameters. It's become so important, and actually it's an education is an awareness for us as well, right? I think we had to take a step back outside the circle and understand what is happening in this particular field. And to publish the first BRSR report, believe me, I had to go back to the textbooks to understand each of these particular topics and make sure that the data, what I give in those particular reports, I think stand the test of audit and scrutiny at any point of time. So therefore, I think the transformation which I see, and I heard that we also published the integrated report and we were also evaluated the best one. So I think this all comes with a lot of focus on this particular topic. Therefore, to conclude, right, the finance, the CFO is just not a bean counter or the guy who strategizes, but also make sure that this planet is in safe hands.
Correct. And thanks for that. And Raj, over to you. Is it limited to only the big companies, or are you also seeing it the transformation across? You are on mute. Want to unmute?
Sorry, I was on mute. My apologies. Thanks, Santosh. Your question actually have made me remember one of the articles that I've written, and the article was inspired by a movie, The Life of a Pie. In that movie, and the article I've written was Life of an Accountant. Okay. In that movie, we have seen that poor boy has to spend few days alone with an animal, wild animal. Today, the CFOs are required to spend not with wild animal, with a lion, with a tiger, with a snake, elephant, alligator, and so on and so forth. So today, typically, the CFOs face many problems. 10 years back, if you see, the role of a CFO was more into reporting or from regulatory lens. Now it has transformed. So he has become practically the chief value officer. He has to take care of investors, to take the situation of a corporate scenario where people are discussing about ESG. So there are many stakeholders like the business, the technology team, the energy team, and the secretarial team, the compliance team. But someone has to integrate everything and take everything on his shoulder. Who is that person? Clearly, the CFO comes out to be the person. So he has to take the entire ESG reporting on his shoulder because he's the custodian of numbers, and he's been doing it quite well with a lot of credibility over the years. And now people believe, the CEO and the board believes, that he is the person who will take care of the numbers of sustainability, which will possibly become much more than the financial numbers that we are generating. Now I come to your question, whether it is the larger organization or smaller organization. As today, the regulator has come up with top 1,000 entities based on market capitalization, but we all know how BRR has started and how BRR has spread. And in fact, SEBI has not minced words. They have said that very soon they want to spread it as much as possible. The leadership indicators will move to essential indicators. So I think the movement will be very soon from larger to smaller and the smallest companies, where the CFO across the industry has to play a a leading role. And one thing I think I need to state here, not only one more additional role that CFO has to play, and I think only CFO can play, is to implement or is to instigate a mindset within the organization, which is called a sustainable mindset. Whatever financial decision it's taken, it comes to the CFO, and while taking the decision, the CFO has to ensure whether sustainability is also factored in the decision. You have taken decision for a mergers, you are taking a decision for setting up a new plant or for producing a new product, but whether you have taken sustainability as also a factor of decision, whether you have considered how much additional emissions you will generate and how would you mitigate that. If not, I think we're missing a point.
Right. Thanks, Raj. Good to know that CFOs are now inside a jungle which has got a lot of biodiversity. So now with the sustainability professionals, me, we have kind of grown up in that era, and I've always heard that money is a coward during those days. It runs at the first sight of trouble. And but in recent times, when it comes to the whole world of ESG, the whole upsurge has happened because money started chasing it. And I think we wouldn't have this kind of a conference with CFOs at the limelight unless that happens, right? I mean, so money has chased ESG. So can you give an impression about what is this new wave which has come in compared to the previous era?
Thank you very much, Santosh, for that question, and thanks to ASA for inviting me here. Well, to answer your question, I think if you look at in the mainstream financial world, capital flows really depend on numerous variables like interest rates, currency exchange rates, the global market outlook, emerging risks. I mean, these are amongst others, right? Now we've starting to see sustainability or climate risks being spoken about. Now, I think ESG in that sense has really come to the fore on account of regulatory push, like Sridhar mentioned, on account of investor pressure, on account of client or customer demands, and its own financial performance across markets. And if you go back to 2019, the whole movement really began late 2019 and maybe early 2020 when large institutional investors started talking about it and making commitments on ESG investing. This was after the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance formation at the COP25. But I would think that, it's mainstream funds like, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, went public, say, in his annual communication to shareholders and to CEOs, calling for capital reallocation towards sustainable and, ESG strategies on account of growing climate risks. And he was the first one who said that it is the fund's fiduciary duty to its clients in promoting long-term value, and therefore climate risks form a part of this. So, and then we saw, other funds, Norwegians, the Canadians, the Japanese, they all came out to say that, hey, you know what, my philosophy is to invest in long-term patient capital. Developing countries is one of the markets, but they would now also start including ESG criteria into their decision making. And then at COP26, we saw GFANS, which brought almost about 550 financial firms from 50 countries, which came together, which further, I think, turbocharged ESG, sustainable finance, bringing out a meaningful decarbonization agenda. I think that was really what we saw. On the other side, if I may just talk a little bit about, you're saying money chasing ESG. That's also because there's a huge regulatory push across the EU markets, the US markets, other economies, even in India, we know BRSR is there, where laws, ESG aligned laws and compliances are emerging for investors and for customers. There is a cascading effect on the investment industry as well as businesses. And what has this translated into? This has translated into ESG-oriented investing assets globally shooting up as much as 3 times in assets across 5 major markets to reach $35.3 trillion in 2020 from some $13.6 in 2012. So that's really the huge, upside that we are seeing. And there's a forecast that it would reach $53 trillion, representing more than a third of the projected total AUM that we are seeing. Sustainable debt on the other side also, this is investing we're talking about. Debt on the other side has crossed the $850 billion mark and expected to reach about $1 trillion. Now, India, if you look at the Indian scenario and this wave of sustainable finance, I don't think we've remained behind. As of March 2023, there are 10 ESG mutual funds with assets of about 10,200 crores. And, they form almost about 0.7% of the total equity mutual fund assets. So it's been good. And, if you look at the Indian market, maybe lack of targeted investment, ESG investment policies, which are limited to maybe just focusing on ESG rating as an additional layer, that may have limited the market to grow. But I think the way we are seeing, last point, the way we are seeing RBI, for example, put out its annual green financing requirements to be at about 2.5% of the GDP that will address the infrastructure gap that are caused by climate events. And in its currency and finance report, many may have seen, which came out just about a week back, it is themed around greener and cleaner India. I think this, along with so many guidelines that RBI has come up with, the climate green deposits disclosure, or the guidance on climate related disclosures, SEBI's BRSR, ESG rating norms, or SEBI's announcement on ESG investing through mutual funds, those kind of norms. I think all this is bound to widen the investable universe for ESG and open doors for Indian investors to invest in funds like that, or even for treasury teams to look at these kind of aspects, or even those, we are working with a large NBFC on its capital raising requirements, where one of the major work going into this whole capital raising requirement is how do they have a very solid ESG and a sustainable finance roadmap. So I think it's only going to pan out in that manner, and the wave is here to stay. Over to you.
Sure, thanks. And Gaurav, a right segue to come to you, because Namita stopped at she started with the regulation being the key driver towards this, and both the other panelists also mentioned about the BRSR. How important is regulation to retain this momentum what has been created in the last 3-4 years? On the contrary, do you think that the growing regulation, I mean, you have this CSRD coming in Europe, you have as Namita said, the SEC in the US is just on the verge of coming out with the regulations, and all across there are multiple things happening. So is this growing regulation going to dampen the momentum, or is it going to be something like a catalytic push towards a further momentum? So what is your take?
Sure. Thank you, Santosh, for the question. And when Sridhar said that it's difficult to be the opening batsman, I felt that it's actually equally difficult to be on the other side of it as well. When you're last among these seasoned professionals who have got immense knowledge on the topic. But of course, since we practice in the area of ESG compliance, so would like to share my thoughts on that with the audience and with the fellow panelists also. So what I feel is that, of course, Santosh, the regulation definitely plays a very, very critical role in retaining the momentum in the ESG. And like Namita also mentioned, a lot has been happening in this particular area. And especially if I say that the corporate India has to start transiting from only the profit as a motto to purpose or people and the planet. So there has to be some push which the regulation definitely provides. And that's what I think. In fact, this also reminds me of one of the interviews I was listening by Mr. Adi Godrej, where he was talking about the importance of the regulatory compliance. And he mentioned that regulatory compliance is not just a box to check off. It is an integral part of doing business in India. And the companies that embrace this fact, in fact, they are better positioned for the success in the future. So it's exactly the same what it is in terms of the ESG also. So we have seen in the past as accountants that when IFRS came and when in fact the Indian version of the SOX, which we called as the internal financial controls, so when that requirement was announced or the CSR requirement came, so it was regulation played or the regulators played a very important and a critical role in ensuring the compliance across. So from that aspect, I feel that regulation doesn't only penalize or it doesn't only make things rigid for you. It also provides a level playing field, right? It provides you a lot of probably the data sets for the benchmarking purpose, right? Because all the players which are your peers in the market, they have to comply with it. So you know that what is going to be the next step. So that's very important. And also the regulation helps us from the perspective of ensuring the transparency. So, and the fixing up the accountability. These two things are very, very important because as we all know, with ESG comes this term which is becoming popular these days called greenwashing. So regulation definitely keeps a check or it actually makes people accountable in that particular scenario. This, in fact, I remember how this term of ESG started coming up when we talk about the regulations. In 2004, in the UN report which came, right, who cares wins. So that time it was coined, and the people who basically were there in that conference which happened were majorly the financial institutions and the asset management companies. So since then, it has been 20 years today. And what happened in the first 15 years, I think much more has happened in the last 5 years. As Namita was also mentioning right now, from 2019 till now, I think there has been a tsunami of regulations, compliances, policy checks which have started coming up, not only in India, but globally also. The CSR started coming up, then the NVGs and the NGRBCs were there, which paved the way for the BRR, and then followed by what presently is required as a regulation called BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. So as we speak today, it is already applicable on the top 1,000 companies. And not to forget the pioneer in this, or I see a path-breaking announcement which has come recently by SEBI, has been in the area of BRSR core. So defining the BRSR core, wherein they have even gone to a level of taking a reasonable assurance, which they have made mandatory for the first 150 listed companies, and then of course it's going to be applicable on the remaining ones in future. So considering that that kind of thrust is being given, so I particularly see it as there are two views to it. You see as the glass half empty or the glass half full. So both ways, I think regulation plays a very important role. So if you see it as half empty, then of course there is a lot to be done in that particular area. As far as India is concerned, there is no sectoral guidance per se currently, which needs to be there. And then if you see it half full, if you being an optimist, and then you see that a lot is happening in this particular area from the regulatory side also. So I feel that definitely it is going to be a much critical impact. The regulations are going to have a much critical impact in this ESG universe.
No, I think it's a good way to put it across, because in many places when there is a upsurge of regulation, people get worried, and the idea here is not to get worried, but it's like a level playing field, and it does help the companies. Raj, you did mention about how the transformation of the accountants is currently happening with the life of accountants, and naturally it has to be ingrained right in the education and capacity building stage, right? Because that's you cannot have today, you cannot have the accountants coming out who doesn't have the knowledge of this. And plus there are a whole array of standards and regulations and all those things which are coming up. So my question to you is that, even IFRS launched the ISSB, and there are going to be standards which are going to come out of that as well. So how do you think these standard stack up? I think you are a member of, you have a deep association with ICAI, and ICAI has also come out with their own standards around this. So how do you think the standards stack up? Are they in conflict with regulation, or are they
Actually, one of the major
regulations? How do you see the standard?
Yeah.
Good.
I think one of the major pain points that the CFOs had earlier was, out of 14 frameworks, which of the frameworks to follow. Okay. I think the Indian regulator has been kind enough to sort out their problem with the BRSR. So they have come up with BRSR, which is aligned with GRI and most of the other regular framework, and it meets the requirement. I mean, it is a very, in my opinion, it's a very good framework. So if the Indian companies are following BRSR, they are in line with most of the global 70-80% of global frameworks. Number one. Yes, there are standards, and IFRS Foundation, ISB has opened their feedback and consultation process on sustainability related disclosures. Feedbacks, I think, are open till mid of August. And this will be mandatory for inclusion in the SASB starting from Jan 24. But more important is, I think if we see the standards as a hindrance, I think we're making a mistake. Standards are very, very important, because standards actually sets the credibility of the data. If you're reporting something and if it's based on the standards and then you have assurance piece on that, then actually the people respect your data. There are a lot of credibility of the data that you do, and the data becomes uniform. I mean, people can compare data with one company to other company, so it has this lot of benefits. So yes, I am part of ICAI Sustainability Board, and I'm happy to let you know that ICAI is actually working very hard. The committee has worked very hard, and the performance is actually fantastic over the last 2 years. And SEBI is working very closely and giving a lot of responsibility to ICAI, so setting up standards. Now, you spoke of education. That is very, very important. I mean, obviously, the chartered accountants today we have do not have sustainability of BRSR as part of their course. So they have not come up, but now the institute has come up, and other agencies also, other bodies also come up with a lot of courses on sustainability. And since the people are aware that how sustainability is important, how the role of CFOs have increased due to the sustainability and how important it is, I think a lot of people are enrolling to the course. I have my information, a lot of people enrolling, they are gaining knowledge. There are other places where also, the enough material is available. In fact, leading universities across the world, in fact, India, one or two universities and few leading universities across the world have started courses on sustainability, certification courses on sustainability, and a lot of people are doing this. So this is very, very important. I mean, people should have increased their knowledge. Without knowledge, nothing happens. And once they increase their knowledge, they will definitely contribute positively in the path of sustainability. Also, the people, chartered accountants, who are practicing, I can tell you, this is a golden opportunity for you. If you actually build your capacity, then it's good from the revenue point of view, and it will really lead you to a great future. That's, I can definitely tell you.
Yeah, and I think one is in terms of understanding and revenue perspective, which you said, but also access to finance is linked to
Yes.
ESG more and more. And Namita, we both worked. I mean, you started it, and I came in as an assurance guy for the first green bond in India, and I think from that time onwards in India, we have seen a huge uprise in the bond market around sustainability. And so the idea is, would you like to share with this group as to what are that potential new opportunities companies have when it comes to funding their sustainability initiatives?
So thanks, Santosh. If you look at overall the current scenario, the overall corporate bond market is muted on account of, supply chain disruptions, rising commodity prices or hardening of commodity prices and interest rate fluctuations. So there's a lot of volatility. But if you look at the Indian market, green bond Indian market, the corporates have done better than banks or financial institutions. And somewhere, one has to understand that a green bond market is linked to long-termism, where say a corporate bond market right now is running on a very short-term based kind of a investor outlook, right? So the basic characteristics of a green or a sustainability linked bond market is where we need some kind of a long gestation period for whatever that we are doing. And what I'm is from an opportunity sense, I think one of the best things that happened to us early this year was the sovereign green bond that the RBI issued, which got a greenium. Greenium is, by the way, where issuers get a price advantage, and in this case, there was a price advantage for this RBI bond. I think the 5-year bond was had a coupon of about 7.1%, and the 10-year had 7.4%. I think a 3 to 6 bips kind of a difference. But I think what really I'm trying to bring out here is India has taken some net zero commitments. It has taken NDC targets, and the volume of capital to be able to fund this needs to come about. And of course, right now, banks mainly have not looked at, barring SBI and Exim, who did some issuances. I think the whole issuances are limited. There are extra cost of, green finance. There's a lack of demand of investors right now, but it's only to grow because transition bonds, because there are so many companies, so much of opportunity in India to transit. And I think that is really the big opportunity in front of India towards its decarbonization agenda. And if you look at the nature of transition finance, it is targeted towards providing capital to high carbon companies implement long-term changes to become greener. They may not become totally green, but greener in terms of their operations, or greener in terms of their production, so on and so forth. And given that India would peak its emissions by 2040, the next 15 years has, a lot of upcoming demands, especially from hard to abate sectors. And I think those CFOs sitting within those sectors need to really start thinking about how their opportunity can come about. The transition bond market globally is picked up, not as much as the overall green bond market, but $3.5 billion, right? And just a last point here, Santosh, and that is SEBI's guidance on additional requirements under the green bond framework for transition bond users. I think that provides a lot of clarity. It sets a clear business case for carbon intensive corporates and lenders, and that is something that they can really capitalize. Thanks.
Oh, thanks very much. And Sridhar, coming to you, I mean, ABB, multiple business segments. Each of these business segments, when you look at the potential risk and opportunity from the whole of the ESG wave, can be different. And how do you assess this, and how do you kind of move ahead in terms of these risk and opportunity landscapes in various businesses?
Okay. I think Santosh is a very pertinent business question, right? So first of all, I think it's very interesting to reply to this question as from a CFO standpoint. So I would like to do that way.
Yeah.
I think it's very important that as a CFO, we need to find a right balance between probably fulfilling the short-term performance versus what we will do with capturing the long-term opportunities related to sustainability. This is some view which we have to basically develop within us. It's a learning for us. And let me tell you, it's a learning, and but all CFOs may not have it right way the first time, or all business managers
Because
may
you
not
are
have
running
it.
quarter to quarter otherwise.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, we wake up, the quarter ends, complete our board meetings, again prepare for the next quarter board meetings. Right? So that's how the life is. Right? So, but I think this is something which we need to really step out and then start to work on that in a more focused manner according to me. So I think in this particular journey, it's very important to identify the risk and the opportunity with proper materiality concept. So I think when we say materiality, we only look at what's the cost, what's the benefit, and sort of stuff. We need to go a bit more beyond it to really understand what's the impact it creates. So I think understanding that impact is so important that before we take the decision on it is how to do it. So what I do is that I tell you a couple of examples, right? For example, if I look at social, right? So there is a risk and opportunity. If you look at the climate and environment element, there's again a risk and opportunity over there as well. So if we look at typically a social and risk and opportunity, I think the main risk which I see over there is the supply chain, right? So I think our entire production ecosystem revolves or actually is very what do you call the MSME and the real small scale vendors are the real important people for us, where we could see there's a bit of a risk over there, right? Because the level of understanding of this particular topic and being a partner with us is something where we should really be aware of to what extent we could push this particular strategy. But having said that, it is also on the other hand, it's an opportunity because we're talking of low cost, we're talking of an ecosystem which is to be developed. So partnering and educating and creating an awareness for this particular sector of suppliers is so very important that I think we need to really make sure that every large organization where we are in, we don't only look at cost or look at commercial benefits, but also pull them up in the journey, right? So that, I mean, it's very clear we cannot survive without them, and we should not be, foolish to say that we could operate without them. The answer is not possible, right? And this is how, and I think actually I was hearing to a discussion with Mr. Nandan Nilikini yesterday. So we had a group board over here looking at India, and it's so interesting that unlike the developed countries, India actually is more stronger because it has got micro transactions rather than macro transactions. And these micro transactions happen at right from and smallest of a vegetable vendor or a tea shop vendor to an upward looking way. So therefore, we as people operating in this particular sphere has to be more relevant to make sure that we partner them in this particular sphere. So that's an important contribution. And that's an opportunity as well to stay relevant. And the next topic, which I would like to take an example, is around uh, climate, right? So net zero on climate change, everyone have promised, we have taken oath that we will do it by a certain number of years. And I think that's definitely an important area what we do. And ABB globally is definitely focusing on it as one of the important targets so that whatever we manufacture, whatever we supply to our customers actually follow this particular journey to be net zero over there. And also it's an equally a good opportunity ourselves now for us as well as what we see because all our products and solutions now are getting focused on that particular objective to say, guys, we need to achieve this target. So how do we contribute? So all of our R&D spend or our educating the customer as well is tuned towards that, right? So that means this is finding a key element over here. So, but having said that, now as a CFO, what do we do? Right? I think there are different topics in this particular role to see, guys. I have looked at the climate risk, I have looked at the society risk, and all these things, right? And I think as this space is changing, it's very important to intensify the internal processes within the organization, right? I see it so necessary. I think the first of all, it starts with a strategy. I mentioned about it. It has to form part of an integral element of a strategy when you look at the business opportunities. And the next comes the communication. I think in large organizations, communication on this topic, right from the top to the bottom, is so often, and it also makes sense. You do a drumbeat about it so that it gets into the minds of so many people in the organization, right? And then how do we address that particular issue? Then the human resources. The people are so important that need to be trained and they to be reskilled to think in these particular lines, right?
Yeah.
And the fourth element is about looking at sustainability function, right? I mean, we have probably accounting and reporting function, an FP&A function, communications, all the stuff. It's so important now in every organization, we need to have a dedicated function which looks at sustainability as a topic, right? And this is an expertise function, and it is not a function which could be probably created by some of the stopgap arrangement. That's pretty much clear because it has so much of nuances doing that.
Yeah.
What is going to happen to this? Another last minute, 1 minute I take. is around internal audit, is also going to incorporate this particular topics going forward. I think we need to be pretty much aware that I think people are going to make sure that this is going to be an element over there. And of course, we talked about finance, we talked about the compliance and all the stuff, and then therefore it forms. I mean, we are all large organizations which create enterprise risk management, right? So we do it as a very focused topic when we do that, and this is going to form and one of the important risks. And how do we need to tackle this? So that's my view, Santosh.
Oh, thanks. I think you answered a question which just now came in, which is asking about how do we go about setting an ESG policy and a roadmap and all. So you just answered the question as well as it came up. So
I didn't see the question, but I thought I should answer that.
yeah. Look, Gaurav, I mean, you lead the risk advisory, and how do you see the Indian companies prepared to really understand? Of course, governance. People have been exposed to the governance risks, but the environment and social risk. How do you think the Indian companies are mature enough to kind of get into that? Because we are seeing a lot of already the precipitation of this risk. You had the first climate change bankruptcy, you had the cross-border carbon tax evolving. Regulations related to human rights are going to kind of challenge some of the businesses. So I think is the Indian industry really understanding the risk and opportunity landscape from specifically from the E and S part of it?
Thanks, Santosh. Yeah, definitely. I think Sridhar just spoke about some of the points which were there in my mind also. See, we being from the risk side or from the risk practice, when we approach to a client, I think the perception is changing now. So earlier, what used to be the requirement from the client side was majorly focused on the governance. They didn't wanted any financial frauds or any misappropriations, right? So the focus was more on the transactions, looking into the compliances from the governance side. But now the demand is changing. I mean, the clients, most of our clients, when we go for an internal audit pitch or for a or even from the ERM side, like Sridhar said, the enterprise risk management, the focus is that how are you going to take care of the E and S part of it? Because G, everyone knows it is pretty much taken care by the CFOs and they have a grip over it because that's of course the compliance area. But environment and social is something wherein you need someone from that background to be coming in and pitching in and talking about it. So of course the Indian companies need to be proactive in this particular area. Currently, I would not say that much has been done in that area, but I think uh, uh, I'll again go to what Sridhar initially said about a case of his daughter. Like, so the Gen Z, which I say now, right? The people who are now taking over the corporates and they are coming at a various positions, they are very concerned about this topic. I remember taking an interview a month back wherein the lady came and she said that I asked if you have any questions for me. She said that, so how your organization is taking care of the sustainability aspect? What are your contribution to it? So, I mean, that is something which people are now started asking. So this is pretty much from the policy side. If I talk about, of course, there's a lot happening. If I have to probably talk about the stats, then around 75% of the companies which are there in the leader group, they have been reporting on the scope 1 and the scope 2 emissions. And then approximately around 50% of them have also reported on the scope 3 emissions, which is basically related to the indirect emissions in the value chain. So with that in mind, and then of course from the social perspective, there have been a surge. I mean, we all know that now there is a requirement to have one women director on board. So from the gender equality perspective, this is something which is really picking up. But then, as they say, it has its own risk. Like greenwashing has come up, there is a concept which has come up called pink washing, if you would have heard about it, wherein they say that you are paying to someone to just be on the board and for a namesake, right? So we have seen these practices earlier in the secretarial side also, and I think the regulator needs to keep a check on that. But I'm pretty sure, I think there is no looking back now, because we don't have an option. And as I said, the today's generation is not going to let that happen. So they are also taking the charge in this particular area, and we see a lot of young talent. So recently, I was pursuing one course on the sustainability, and the average age of the people who were taking up that course was actually, it was around 27, 28. So I think a lot is happening from that perspective, I would say, Santosh.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm taking some questions. One question you already answered, but the other question which just come in is how urgent is it for corporates to embrace the ESG? I mean, after telling all these things, if that's a question, I'm a little worried. But having said that, let me combine it with my question as well. A company like Reliance, how urgent it is, and maybe let me put it that you have a target of net zero by 2035, Raj. Knowing the size of the company, knowing the business what you are in, people will be perplexed to really see that. And I'm quite sure that Reliance have a legacy of doing things in a scale and in something which is not predictable and all those things. But having said that, maybe combine it with the urgency and combine, maybe throw some light about how you are going to achieve it.
Yeah, thanks. So I will take the question to two parts for urgency. So I can tell you that every month I have to face at least one or two calls from investors, rating agencies, analysts, and these calls are only directed towards ESG. This was unheard of 2 years, not 5 years, 2 years, 3 years back. Also, we never thought like this, but it is today, right? So there is great amount of urgency because the corporates, I think the corporate leaders, the world leaders, everyone is woken up to the ESG. I think Namita spoke of Larry Fink. So people, yes, his communications and people understand that this is the need of the day. And if they are not doing it, I mean, their perceptions of their company, their ability to raise finance, their ability to get investments will deeply be affected. So it is urgent. One more important thing that what people ask, well, it's a big company's ball game. I mean, they will do whatever medium and small. I think the medium and small has to also come in the party very soon. If they have not come to the party, because it is the responsibility of big corporates to take them, because if you see any framework like BRSR or any other framework, you have to take care of the supply chain. The spirit is not going alone, but taking people together. So even big corporates will definitely push his SMEs and other suppliers and his entire ecosystem to be aligned with this. And if in some part of the ecosystem not aligned, it will be difficult for them to survive. So I think the entire ecosystem will move towards this. So the urgency is there and direction is there. Second is about 2035. Yes, I mean, when 2035 is it's a very steep target, and but well, you said it that Reliance are known for doing things which apparently are very difficult, and we have a legacy. And this time, I believe very strongly that we'll again surprise people. We will do what we always do: promise less and deliver more. This time also. Now about our strategy. I mean, we have like many other corporates, we have realized there is no one path to the moksha. There are many things. So we are into creating sustainable energy and materials for India's future needs. We are building world-class assets. You know that we have committed 75,000 crores of investment in next few, it takes 2-3 years, and this is lead to 5 gigafactories where battery, electrodes, solar, hydrogen, and then other equipments to store those and transfer those. We are also into developing next generation carbon capture. We have realized capturing carbon is important, but even more important is to have a strategy or system in place to convert those carbon dioxide value-added products. That's what will give the impetus to your bottom line and the top line. We are into creation of holistic circular material businesses. We are very aggressively managing the transformation from fossil fuel to clean fuel. You know, our partnership with BP. You can read a lot of newspapers, other agencies. If you walk into one of our so-called new fuel stations, you will see how electricity and electric charging, etc., are being built in there. So I mean, we have a strategy in place, and I'm confident.
So you are hedging across multiple. You are hedging across multiple technologies which are evolving.
Correct. And we are paranoid as far as our own manufacturing plants are concerned. We spend a lot of R&D, minimize energy cost, as well as to ensure that less emissions are caused. That paranoid is there across all our manufacturing facilities. That is an added feature that we have.
Yeah. So, Namita, there is a question as to what do you see the future of sustainable finance unfolding? Maybe I would just narrow it a bit in terms of also request you to talk about the sustainable finance taxonomy, which EU has come, but even in India, Ministry of Finance is working on it. What has it got to do, and how the whole of this would evolve?
Well, like I said earlier, Santosh, there is, and you heard Raj say, and I resonate with that, where more and more investors have started to talk about sustainable finance, ESG. So, I have always said when, the CSR law came, it is not about the 2%, but it is the 100%, or it's the rest of the 98%. And that's what investors are asking us today. I think a taxonomy would be a kind of a classification system that will bring in market standardization. And like I think Gaurav said earlier, that no longer will regulate kind of not wanted, but they are going to set the level playing field, right? I mean, it's going to be kind of a rule book to improve the uptake of sustainable products or solutions or finance for that matter. And these kind of taxonomies only make it easier for investors to price a particular financial instrument, price the risk, the tenor, the terms, and there is a kind of comparability that gets established. So, I think it's only going to be advantageous if we have some kind of a formalization in the market that will only give a thrust and a boost to the whole sustainability aspects, away from greenwashing, the kind of credibility that we're talking about. I think, one other thing in the short term, if something like this is introduced, say in India, and like you, Santosh, I have also been a part of the task force which the ministry set up, and we did the taxonomy. We worked on different aspects. So I believe it should only come out soon. But I think it would kind of drive the market in a very concerted manner to look at how this whole space will grow. A reallocation of capital may occur, which could create temporary volatility in asset prices or capex plans for businesses. But I think I would try to put a flip here. I would say that, the kind of audience we have here today, the chartered accountants, the CFOs, I think one needs to look at how sustainable finance will work as your opportunity. I mean, when you're where are you getting the capital from? Where are you accessing the capital from? Today, there are diverse investors who are looking to deploy capital in this space, right? So I think that is one of the biggest advantages. Transition, as I said, Reliance 2035 with its net zero plans, a lot of your I know you have very credible borrowings, but I think this can come from very diverse kind of investors. And also, how do you then concentrate on your supply chain? I think that is going to be the challenge.
Yes.
While companies would be able to do it, I think the supply chain challenges need to be addressed, because the small companies, the granular data that is not available today, how are we able to mobilize that, on the back of that, finance those kind of companies to be able to come up the curve? I mean, ultimately, MSMEs are about 45% of the manufacturing sector, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, thanks, Namita. And Sridhar, just stay with me for 2 minutes. And, Gaurav, just a couple of words. What would be your advice to the companies who are starting with BRSR, because this is the first year of compliance? What would be your quick advice, just in a couple of lines?
Sure, Santosh. So I think much has been said, and Sridhar has given a very precise 5 or 6 steps which everyone has to take care of while they are starting their journey. But just to add on that, I would say that first is going to be to assess where you are today. So start with an kind of an impact assessment or readiness, that where exactly you are. So even if we are taking, like we are using a Google Maps and it shows that from location A you have to go to B, you should know where you are today. So just not following anyone in the market or listening to the news items or looking at what the others are doing. One should not work on this particular area. The second and the most important part of this entire exercise, which we have felt in last couple of years, is data collection. I think that is going to be really a big challenge in the coming time, which initially people don't actually anticipate, but later on it really hits them hard. So as they say, data is the new oil, and we all know that what is the challenge with the oil, right? It is all about the availability. So I feel that data collection is very important, and you need to have right systems and processes in place. So
The
in fact,
accuracy and reliability is
exactly.
something which people have to take care of.
Right. And I think the communication between the departments in the company and a single spoke who takes care of this entire thing, which is today you call them the chief sustainability officer, as you would know. So that is very important
Yeah,
for the company. So that's just my advice shortly.
sure. Sridhar, forward-looking is not a term very pleasant for many CFOs, but just asking you, what's your advice to budding chartered accountants around this topic?
Okay, so just to start on a lighter note, people who are studying, pursuing CA, please pass it out in the first attempt, so even though it's been difficult sometimes. Right, people who have already been qualified, so I think I'm looking for it. I think do not limit it with financial performance, but also look at non-financial performance. Identify a couple of good organizations, large organizations, which have already published their integrated report along with BSR, BRSR, and go through them. That's number two. And number three is acquaint yourself with this particular topic, right? And the earlier you are, the more benefited, the more accomplished you are. The later you are, then it's outdated. That's number two. And number three is that I think today, when gaining not only accounting standards, knowledge on accounting is important, but also gaining knowledge on GRA standards and certification sometimes also is helpful to get an expertise in that area. So these are my top three sort of an advice or an
Thank
insights
you.
with a limited knowledge. That's what I have. My
Oh,
two
thank
cents
you.
on it,
Thank you.
Santosh.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think we covered quite a bit of ground in terms of the topics which we were bound to cover. So thank you for your contribution towards that. And Bikramjit, giving back to you.
Thank you, Santosh. In fact, thank you, everyone. I mean, Santosh, Sridhar, Raj, Namita, Gaurav, for taking us through this very, very engaging session and, sharing with us your first-hand experience on the subject. It truly matters to all of us to weigh you all out, the experts on the subject. And of course, a big thank you to all our participants who have been in such an amazing audience. I'm sure you would all have immensely benefited from this very, very relevant topic which we took up today. We've tried to, answer as many questions as we could. Santosh has been taking up, but still, I know there are some unanswered ones. We'll be replying them separately over email. And if you have any more queries, please reach out, to manisha.sachdeva@asa.in. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great week ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Pleasure
Bye-bye.
meeting you all,
Thanks a lot.
guys.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye bye.